Have you ever felt that dread, that pit in your stomach when you're just staring at a blank page and you know a deadline is looming? Yeah, you are definitely not alone. So today, we're going to break down the Writing for Success textbook and build the foolproof guide. We're going to turn that blank page from something scary into a canvas for your best ideas. Let's dive in.
We all know this feeling, right? The blinking cursor, the clock ticking away. It can feel totally paralyzing. But what if there was a system, a step-by-step process that you could use for any writing assignment that turns that feeling of dread into a feeling of, well, control? That is exactly what we're going to unpack here.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to build this skill from the ground up in 5 totally logical steps. We'll start with the real nuts and bolts, the writer's foundation. Then we'll get into how to structure your ideas, master the writing process itself, pull in some outside research, and finally learn the super important skill of giving credit where credit is due.
All right, first up, the writer's foundation. You know, think about it like building a house. You wouldn't start with the roof, would you? Of course not. You need a solid foundation. And in writing, that foundation is all about good grammar and choosing the right words. Without it, even the most amazing ideas can just fall apart.
So this is our core toolkit, pulled right from the textbook. We're talking about the essentials, like making sure your subjects and verbs agree, and using punctuation correctly. Now look, I know this can feel like the boring part, but these aren't just random rules. They're the tools that make sure your reader understands exactly what you're trying to say.
And that's the bottom line right there. Strong sentences are the absolute bedrock of strong writing. If you can get this part right, everything else we're about to cover gets so much easier.
Okay, so our sentences are solid. Now what? How do we take those sentences and build them into something bigger, something with impact? This next part is all about structure, taking those individual bricks and building them into paragraphs and eventually a whole essay that really makes a point.
And at the very heart of any good essay is the single most important sentence you will write, the thesis statement. Seriously, this thing is like the North Star for your entire paper. It's a clear, bold declaration of your main argument, and it guides every single word that comes after it.
So let's break down a strong body paragraph. It's actually a pretty simple but powerful formula. You start with your claim, that's your topic sentence. Then you back it up with evidence. But here's the part people often forget, and it's crucial. You have to explain why that evidence proves your point. That's your analysis. Wrap it up with a concluding sentence, and boom, you have a perfect building block for your argument.
So, we've got the foundation and we've got the blueprint. But where do you actually, start? The secret is to stop thinking of writing as one giant, intimidating task. Instead, you break it down into a process. Think of this as your reliable map that will guide you every single time. Chapter 8 in our source breaks this down into 4 stages. First, pre-writing. This is just about getting your ideas out, no judgment allowed. Second, you outline. Give those messy ideas some structure. And notice, it's only now, in stage 3, that you actually start drafting your paper. Finally, you revise and edit. Following this order is what makes the whole thing so much more manageable and way less stressful.
And let's be real, the textbook is very honest here. There's no magic wand that's going to make writing suddenly quick and easy. It's work. But the process we just walked through, that is the strategy. It's the professional's approach that turns a massive task into a series of manageable steps.
All right, what happens when your own ideas aren't enough? Well, most academic writing isn't done in a vacuum. You're expected to join a much larger conversation, and that means doing research. This part is all about how to find, evaluate, and use credible sources to make your arguments even stronger.
One of the very first things you need to get straight is the difference between primary and secondary sources. Think of it like this. Primary sources are the raw evidence, the original data, the letter, the eyewitness account. Secondary sources are people talking about that evidence. Knowing which is a fundamental first step in good research.
So finding a source is only half the job. Now, you have to put on your detective hat. You got to ask yourself, is this information actually reliable? Is this author an expert? Is it super biased? Is it even relevant? You have to interrogate your sources to make sure you're building your paper on solid rock, not on shifting sand.
And that brings us to our final, and I would argue maybe the most important section. When you use other people's work, you have an ethical duty to give them credit. Citation isn't just about avoiding trouble. It's about showing respect and being a good citizen in the world of ideas.
This right here is the golden rule, straight out of Chapter 12. And it could not be any clearer. If the idea didn't come from your own head and it's not common knowledge, you absolutely must cite it. No exceptions. And if you're ever on the fence, just cite it. When in doubt, cite. It's that simple.
So what does this actually look like? A references page might seem a little intimidating at first glance, but really, it's just a list of addresses. It's a roadmap that allows your reader to go and find the exact same sources you used. It shows them the foundation your work is built upon.
So as you're doing your research, what info do you need to grab? Make sure for every single source you note the author, the date, the full title, and the publication info. Trust me on this one, collecting this stuff as you go is going to save you a massive headache later on.
Okay, let's be crystal clear about the stakes here. Plagiarism, which is just using someone else's work as your own, is academic theft. And the consequences are really serious, from failing a class all the way to getting kicked out of school. And it is 100% avoidable just by following the citation rules we've been talking about.
So there you have it. From the smallest little punctuation mark all the way to the structure of a major research paper, you now have the map. You have the tools, you have the process. That blank page, it's not your enemy anymore. It's an opportunity. So the only question left is, what are you going to build with it?